my brother Ronnie from a different mother. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing really well today, thanks.
Great to hear. Now Ronnie has an amazing story, and apart from raising like $40 billion over the last whichever period of time, what I love about you is your heart, right? So tonight I'm looking forward to delving a little bit deeper into that beautiful red thing that lights up your whole chest and your whole aura, mate. So we'll get started. Now, for those of you who are just tuning in for the first time, so remember, 7 p.m. Tropical Nomad. You can join us as a studio audience as well. So feel free to come down a little bit earlier, grab some F&B, and then come and see us and ask some questions and be part of this great experience. So let's get started. So Ronnie, before we had a quick chat, and the thing which really hung with me was this concept of collective intelligence. So when I say collective intelligence to you, what comes up?
What comes up? It's the ability for us to all come together on a shared purpose and utilize each other's skill sets. So, I mean, the world we're used to and the structures we're used to were definitely served a time, and they were fit for purpose at that time. So these hierarchical corporate structures that we're all used to with a CEO and leadership, they're great. But, the reality is, no matter who the CEO is, he doesn't know everything, and he's not going to get every decision right. And in fact, the people who are part of any company, they also have tremendous value to add, both in terms of having a shared ownership, but also in terms of having a shared vision and a shared insight into how to execute that vision. So then the question is, how can we all come together? And instead of it being, a CEO, be a decentralized CEO. Because as smart and brilliant as I think I am, and we all think we are, I don't get it right 100% of the times, shockingly. So if we could develop a merging of technology and humanity on ourselves, and we can use the technology to empower humanity rather to replace humanity, well, then we can interact with technology and have it help us to come to a collective decision making. So if you almost imagine it's like a ball of mirrors, and it's just reflecting back slightly different perspectives, and you weight the perspective based upon that person's involvement, their passions, their expertise. And then if you can hone in and harness the power of that collective, you're going to come to a superior result over time. Now, the experiments within collective intelligence are going on in multiple places in the planet, and the reality is this in collective intelligence we've created, and part of the ones I'm working on, it's still an infant. It's still a baby out there. But it is already making decisions that I disagree with, and then 3 months later I go, that's why the collective intelligence came to that decision. And you can already start to see the benefits of it. Just taking it a little bit back to banking and my finance career, I always dreamed in finance that I would get to the top and then we'd all work together on a common purpose, even if it would be as mundane as, I was at Morgan Stanley and our common shared purpose was to beat Goldman. But it wasn't even that when I got to the top of the corporate, or higher up, let's say, the corporate ranks, because people are really still after themselves, shooting at each other left and right, especially in the finance arena. And, there is no common shared purpose. And so that collective intelligence allows you to hone around a shared purpose, a shared passion, and then organize yourselves, value, reflect yourselves into a machine, and then vote together on decisions. And therefore you have collective ownership. And if you have collective ownership and collective passion, and you're collectively decision making in hopefully an intelligent way, well, then you're really going to make progress,
Thank you, Ronnie. And, what I love about this, and it's a place where we connect, as you know. So one of these beautiful paintings behind us, amazing exhibition here at Tropical Nomad, I see life like that, right? So it's a painting that has been co-creatively brought into existence but it's a jigsaw puzzle, and that jigsaw puzzle, each piece has 3 parts to it, or 3 things that define that piece. So one part of it could be that we do what we do best, or what we're currently in mastering or mastery of. The second one is about, that we trust ourselves and we trust others too. So it's not this thing of it's my IP and I'm not going to share it. So then I'm limiting what I can do or what's possible because my ego is involved. And the third one is that it's an initiative or a project that uplifts humanity in some way, shape, or form, right? And I think it's probably after the second time meeting you, I got really clear that you see it exactly the same way. But not only that you've really gone and explored that pathway and done so much work and research and effort in that direction that we'll get into seeds and Highford later on. But what really interests me is that where do you think this started from? So what I mean by that is that, if you look back in your past, right? So rarely are we just made like this. Maybe it's our conditions. Maybe it's a person or people in our lives as we were growing up that something happened to us and then we saw life differently and consequently became who we are today. So if I ask you that question, was there anyone or anything that you remember in your early past that was already beginning to kind of move you in this direction?
I think, part of it stems from my childhood environment where, I was an only child and spent a lot of time on my own. And, as I moved into school environment and then into early working life, I was just excited to be around smart people. And I wanted to learn from them, and I wanted to co-create with them. And I didn't mind being vulnerable with that. If I didn't know the answer, I would ask. And in the corporate banking environment, that's not what people do. If they don't know the answer, they're going to keep quiet because they don't want to seem like they don't know. And I saw that a lot. And it also meant that you're always working in competition with each other. And we're already realizing cooperation is a far superior way to work and produces better outcomes. So it was, it was really that. And, as I worked my way through my finance career, it became more and more stark. I thought as I got more senior, well, then we'll all work together with the senior people and we'll all, co-create. And, I don't know everything, but I know these areas and I can share and I can learn. And it wasn't really that. It wasn't that at all. And then I got, I guess very senior, and I instantly didn't see that around, that piece that I was searching for. So I made the decision to leave banking, having got to a place where, I guess a lot of people don't get to, and then they, you're there, you clip the coupons and keep earning the money. But it wasn't fulfilling for me. I really wanted that dynamic around me, and that kind of led me into the conscious capital world and, surrounding myself with people I wanted to work with, asking the stupid questions as much as I could, and benefiting from that, without the technology around me, that collective intelligence, and then finding my way into this world where, I'm not the boss, and we collectively come to decisions.
Got it. And then, what do you think you learned from Mum, and what do you think you learned from Dad? If I'd put you on the spot.
I learned from my father. I used to rebel against this a lot, and he would always say to me, "It's not what you know, it's who you know." And I hated that, actually, growing up. I was always like, no, it's not about that. I'm going to work hard, and that's enough. So, as we know, it's both of the things. You need to network and spend time with people because, we're humanity. You can't just be isolated. And from my mother, work ethic, balance, fairness, that extreme kind of drive, I think. And my mother, my mother was a GP in North London, in Willesden Green. Not the easiest place to be, single mother. It was tough for her, for sure. But she was, and I look at her that way as a GP. And now when I'm talking about some of the things that I'm involved in, sometimes I don't give her the credit I should. And I'll ask her a question and start talking to her about, civilization change. And then I realize, wow, my mum is really smart. Wow. And she comes back at me with all of these things. I'm like, oh, wow. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, I'm smart. Am I? Okay, maybe I am. That's where I get it from. But you kind of pigeonhole people because they were, she's a doctor. She doesn't know about this stuff. In fact, this is things that matter to humanity, and everyone knows about this stuff. Everyone in this room has an element of the story and, the purpose and the passion that comes with, where we're driving humanity to the next step.
And then so single parent, right? Your mum did an incredible job. So what's recently coming to me more and more is grandparents, right? It's this thing that maybe we pass through the family. I'm like my grandfather. I'm like you're like your grandmother. You got this from your granddaughter, right? So if I ask you that, if you knew your grandparents, what sort of people were they for your, so someone in your family must have had some incredible drive, like where did it come from with you?
I didn't spend much time with my grandparents. I think on both sides, they were quite strict. There was a lot of, discipline involved. For my mother, it was certainly considered outrageous that she should go want to study to be a doctor. I mean, that was not the plan at all. And she had to do it in hiding and, study in hiding and all of that. I think it's more... I think for me that question is more about, the generational involvement and the ancestral, breaking of challenges that we all face. So, I think in many ways there's been lack of emotional connection and lack of connection to self. And so we all have that discoveries for ourselves of, I guess the self-love journey, or however we want to describe that. And it's in part, coming into that feeling and evolving what's there ancestrally into a place, which allows me to connect with my 4-year-old son, in a beautiful way, and, I guess drives, my passion for making this world a better place for him, right? It's because of my connection with him. And I think, we are all becoming more evolved in terms of our human connections. I mean, the pandemic has been a great way to shine that spotlight for us all on how important that is. I think that's really where it comes from. Got it.
And so what I'm noticing, right? So like for me, for example, my dad, right? So his father, my grandfather, left him at the age of 5 in Jamaica working on a plantation, right? And then my dad, because I grew up in 2 children's homes from 6 months to the age of 18 in London, right? And then our dad kind of left us when I was 6 months old. So I find that there's this generational cycle that seems to be evolving, and in many ways, part of what I'm consciously doing is bringing that cycle to an end. Right? I have 2 kids, like they're 4 and 6. They're two girls. I love them dearly, and but it's just interesting to see, what patterns kind of play into our lives somehow. And hearing you say, about your dad, right? That it's not what you know, it's who you know, and you rebelled against it. It's like, no, Dad, you're not right. You're wrong. And I see that now, who you know is very important, as you mentioned, right? So that there's these things that we resist and fight and struggle with, and then eventually, like a lava, emerging from this chrysalis, we kind of crack that shell. We peer out and say, I think I got it now, So if I were to ask you if there was a moment or some moments in your life where you felt like you were, and you just pop, which kind of moment or moments come up for you?
I think, going through a challenging divorce with a 1-year-old son, and really coming back into myself and reflecting on, why didn't this work? What, and instead of just chucking the blame everywhere else for a certain second, just going inward and saying to myself, okay, let me really evaluate this. And not evaluate with this for a change, but evaluate with this and understand from my heart what was happening. And, go slow to go quick, they say, right? So finally understanding that and being still with myself and letting all the emotions come up and dealing with them. I think it was obviously a real turning point for me, and that was the most recent turning point for me. The other part of it was, there've been a couple of moments where I've dramatically changed career, and I qualified to be a barrister in the UK, and then I decided that I wanted to be a criminal barrister, so I wanted to be on my feet talking. Funny that. So that's come full circle for me.
Full circle.
And then I saw, people in. It was around, I was qualifying as a barrister around the year 2000, and I saw my friends who were in tech getting paid stupid money to deal with the Y2K problem that never happened. And I was like, hang on a second. And then I looked at, how much, we weren't particularly wealthy as a family, and, but middle class. And my mum was, my mum did fairly well as a doctor, but, I was looking at that and going, I want to be a criminal barrister. That means I'm really working for the state and the government, and crime doesn't pay, as they say, as being a barrister. And, then I was like, okay, well, then I can move to become a corporate barrister or a common law practice. And I was like, well, then I'm not on my feet as much talking. And if I'm going to be behind a desk and a computer and I'm doing it for money, well, I might as well be a banker and, do that properly. That's how I fell into banking, was really that, that coming out. But I remember when I turned around and said to my father that, I've decided to not pursue this career as a barrister. He had some pretty strong. Sure. Yeah, he had some pretty.
How dare you?
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of.
You're throwing your life away.
Yeah, I'm throwing my life away. I did get that. And I kind of got that from, I think, every headhunter in Hong Kong. The moment I left investment banking, and they all called up to shuffle me into the next role, which was the assumption that they all made that I would 100% do. And I'll never forget, actually, it was really funny, because the first one called, and I tried to explain to them that I wasn't, this is it, I'm really leaving and I'm not going to do another role. And they were like, you're joking, like, no way, like, you've just got to this position, world's your oyster. And by the second one, they would call me up, and I was like remembering, well, what did I want to do when I was really young? I wanted to be a rock star, and I was fortunate to get promoted really early, and therefore could leave banking at having become quite senior at a young age, and I was still sub 40, and still sub 40 you can apply to American Idol to be a rock star. So I told the next headhunter that called me, I said, they said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm going to go on American Idol and be a rock star. and they somewhat struggled with that at the end of the phone, but I kept it up for about 5 or 6 calls from then on, and I had my line, and they didn't quite know how to deal with that. Now I feel like I should have left, banking right when I started and applied for American Idol, but my singing talents aren't really good enough, obviously.
No, but you've got the right name, like Ronnie's a great name, right? Ronnie's like a name, it's like, I'm Ronnie Xerxes Potel, like, musician. Yeah. Banker? Hell no, musician. That makes sense. So look, you touched upon your heart, which is a bit about you, which I love. I love all of it, but the heart especially. So then we're sensing that this heart is coming out, right? So you've got this barrister. You almost went to the polar opposite to kind of perhaps get to a place of realizing, well, hang on a second, right? All of these things that I'm doing are not fulfilling me, right? And so there's got to be another way, right? And this heart part of you, like being a single, bringing up being brought up by your mum as a single parent. Now, I understand how difficult it can be to be a parent, especially mum, because mum, dad's out there, no disrespect, but you know I'm telling the truth, right? So it's always about mum, right? Dads do their thing and it's great, but when all is said and done, it's always about mum. So if you don't have a strong mum, you're done. Because as Obama, said in one recent interview, if you want to see how your child's going to turn out, look at the mum. Now that's not to put any undue pressure on you women out there, all right? Maybe I just did, but it's true, So like, what I'm getting is that, so your mum being a doctor, that Hippocratic oath, right, there for others, essentially is at the heart and soul of that. Maybe not so much now with the farmer coming in, right? So something was passed on to you to activate that heart energy that you have, right? So when did you start to really begin to tap into this, to start to move in the direction that you've moved on now, which is more towards that conscious capitalism?
So there was always something there, right? Whether it be training to be a barrister, whether it be working in investment banking, I always felt slightly misaligned. And that's not to say the world of being a barrister or being in the existing financial system is a bad place to be. It's definitely served a fantastic purpose, and see the world we live in today versus the world that, existed 40, 50 years ago. Humanity's come a long way. It's great. But for me personally, I would walk through the airports, and I would have to travel a lot. Towards the end of my banking career, I was running a team across Asia Pacific. I would end up being on planes 4 or 5 days a week. And, I would walk through the airports with my bag in hand, or my trolley bag. And, I didn't take the pride that some of my other banking colleagues took. When they'd be at a dinner party and they would hand over their business card, or I would ask them what they do, they would very proudly say, I'm a managing director at X Bank. Or, I run this business. And, quite often I'd be sitting next to them and I should have a bigger ego about it. I run a bigger business, or, I'm more senior or whatever. But I would quietly say, I'm a banker. And so I wasn't owning it, because it wasn't quite me. Now, that's not to say it wasn't enjoyable in places. It was an amazing experience. It helped me develop resources and understanding, a way of working. And, it was great for its time for me. But I would walk through the airports with the trolley bag, and at the end of the day, I was like, what am I? I'm a traveling salesman, and it doesn't matter what's in the bag. Okay, it's pitch books about billion-dollar deals or $100 million deals, or it could be a kid's toy, and maybe I would get even more satisfaction if it had been a kid's toy actually, that I was selling. So I just didn't connect. It was always slightly misaligned for me. And by 2012, I got to that position, and I looked around, and I was invited to New York at this dinner with the good and the greats, and I sat around with them, and I didn't feel that connection with them. And I thought, you get to the top of banking, and then it's the collective intelligence. We're all going to work together. And they were all just working on, it's an individual sport, investment banking. It is not a team game, no matter how much they describe it. It really isn't. And so, that moment of leaving banking and saying, okay, well, I've done a bunch of things in banking that ultimately are, in some ways they've been very good. I financed some great companies that do great things, but I also raised billions of dollars for, God knows what, palm oil plantations, et cetera, et cetera. And I left, and I thought, wow, well, I clearly am good at this. They promoted me along the way. That doesn't mean I enjoy it and have to stay with it. And it's provided me with these resources and skills. Well, how can I apply them now in a different way? And I was wrestling with it, and I was like, well, I have my own definition of what I think is good for the planet. So everyone does, and I was just going to take that forward and do what I called conscious capital entrepreneurship. So, co-found businesses, invest in businesses, help in businesses that were in any way doing something, in my own definition, that was positive for the planet. So yeah, those moments in time, resonated, and they still resonate today for me. And, I love every day now. I love, the decision-making processes, as complicated as they are, these experiments in collective intelligence. But we're all, and all these people I meet now, and all the people that, are attracted to me and me to them to have a conversation, you can see that they're already on purpose. They're already on this journey. And, there's huge swathes of humanity that is on this journey, because we see the world around us and we recognize it. And what I will tell you is also, so do a lot of the senior members of the existing financial world. They also see it and understand it. Like, we're at the point, especially with the pandemic, where people are beginning to understand, we're as healthy as our, weakest human. And the wealth gap has, a decade ago well exceeded historic wealth gaps throughout the lifespan of humanity, and we've also always seen violent and non-violent revolutions. And I firmly believe wholeheartedly that it's neither a violent and non-violent revolution. We're going to step into a beautiful renaissance. And the other side of humanity's challenges right now is really an acceleration into a point that drives real and meaningful fundamental civilization change. And yeah, that's what I'm passionate about now. And my life never made sense before. I wasn't really a barrister. I wasn't really I was a banker, because I say that I wasn't really a banker. My old banking colleagues said, well, you were really a banker. You did it. But in my heart, I wasn't really a banker. And, I've been on this conscious capital entrepreneurship, and I'm an entrepreneur. Then, about a year and a half ago, I found a place for me where I could bring all these skills together into one adventure and one dream. And that was really powerful for me. And then suddenly, okay, my life makes sense. I can pull all these threads together now and use them, for a cause that I believe in, for a purpose I believe in.
I love that. And look, this is the last question of this particular area, and then we're going to move on to these great projects that you're manifesting through, right? So you have a son, beautiful, beautiful son, by the way, thank you. Lovely to meet him the other day. So now, the question that comes up for me is that, if there's a young person now, right, who's coming through banking or coming through that career path, and they're on that journey, with all that you've been through, right? So it's almost like, what advice would you give to your younger self, or what advice would you give to your son?
Listen more. I think I spent a lot of my early career, and even still today, talking too much. You don't learn by speaking, you learn by listening. So definitely listen more. I think that's critical. And life is a joy. We're here to play. Find your passion, find your purpose, and play, and everything else will come into place. The financial side, your relations with people. Because if you're not in alignment with your purpose and you're continuing to fight it, you'll fight with the people around you. You won't be in that comfort zone within yourself. But it takes a while and a different journey for everyone to find that. Be patient and gentle with yourself through that process. You don't need to always know. But learn and listen from those around us. I think I misunderstood the importance of history when I was at school. In fact, I didn't know why we studied history at school. I wish the history teacher had told me. I was like, this seems pointless to me. And now in later life, I'm like, oh, wow, I really need to know what the patterns are for humanity, and what happened, and what this means, and what those learnings were from these patterns. So I think being a student of history, which I am only just starting on for my own journey, is quite important as well.
Love it, man. Thank you, brother Ronnie. Beautiful. All right, so change gear. So I love the fact that I or we get a better understanding of who you are, right, and where you came from, and in a way, like why you are the way you are in certain senses. So then what I'd love to look at now or look into is the heart-fueled projects, right, that you're doing. Right, because I think this is an extension of who you are, right? So, which came first for you, out of all the I guess the life that you're having now? Which project came first? Tell us a little bit about it and why. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I left investment banking and went through that journey, as I said to you guys, of okay, what do I want to do? I want to do things which I think are positive for humanity, and deploy my capital and expertise in that way. And the first one was just bringing me back to home. My mother's a doctor. A good friend of mine is involved in addressing working in the cancer field and the medical device space. And it was the right time. He needed my skill set, and so I joined the board of that, and I've been on the board of that now for 8 years now, or 7-8 years now. And that was a pure heart project. I loved the team. It brought me back into my mother's field of world, and it was a very obvious give back to me. It was just like very direct. Okay, it's healthcare. It's people with cancer. I can do something really. It's really obvious. What I now realize is, and I realized pretty soon subsequently, it was great. My skill set was very valuable for that as well. But the healthcare world is highly specialized, highly complex. I know a great deal more about cancer treatments than I did then, and it's actually been my only healthcare exploration because I know what I don't know as well, and that's really, really important. And knowing, I'm fortunate to be surrounded by a very smart board that does know this field very well, and I'm grateful for that.
Got it. And then what came next?
What came next was I had this thesis in my head around renewable infrastructure, so solar, wind, and I had a thesis in my head about experiences, not things. And so there was an exploratory company that I put together that evolved into different things over time, but it was really focused on democratizing the financial system in some respects, or tinkering with the existing financial system to make it more fair. Like, I'm a Libra, I wanted balance. I saw a lot of imbalance in the system, a lot of people taking through a lack of transparency and direct access, way more than they should in just a simple transaction. So I started on an investing firm to try and kind of address the VC models and other financial investing models that are out there, and explored the solar world through that to begin with. And that company ended up evolving into something else in the blockchain space, which I'll come to. And then, it was on the experiences rather than things. So, I'd spent some time at Burning Man and, seen how these authentically engaged events can really draw people in and communicate with them. And that authentic connection that you can have at some of these events means infinitely more than hours sitting across the table in a meeting with them. And so I was very interested by that, and I was interested by the ability to deliver very important, meaningful messages through these authentically engaged events. And through the music director at Robot Heart, he and Burning Man, we ended up bringing me into a festival in Thailand called Wonderfruit. Which is a fantastic event. So if you like Burning Man, fantastic principles, but incredibly wasteful from a resource perspective. In fact, it's an ecological, nightmare. All right. So
great fun, but ecological nightmare, guys. You heard it here.
Well, between all the generators, all the single-use plastic that is involved in there, but it's a really important first step. Like Burning Man showed the way. And all these principles that are part of Burning Man are brilliant, and it's an amazing event. But we want to do more of them. We want to spread that knowledge and awareness and gifting societies and ways of living, to more places. So we don't want to do more events that work like that. And Pete, the founder of Wonderfruit, saw that and wanted to do an event on his family's land in Thailand, which was true conservation and sustainably themed, but using the tenets and principles behind what was going on at Burning Man. And we're in a 6th, 7th year. Amazing event. I mean, it's truly beautiful. There's farms on there. All the stages are built out of sustainable materials. I mean, there's a rice stage made out of rice, and it was harvested and then people eat it. I mean, it's just phenomenal. And goes, there isn't a billboard about the event that isn't using reclaimed substances. I mean, the sticking true to that vision to the core. I was incredibly impressed by Pete, and I'm to this day about how he stayed true to that vision. So participating and being involved, in that event, and helping on the financial side and other sides has been great fun. And alongside that, something as simple as zip lines. I've got a company now that we're just opening up in Macau later this year with Zip City. But, and it's an urban project, which wasn't where this comes from, and I think we'll go back to our green roots. But the desire there was a gravity-led attraction to get people into nature and explore nature. And what a simple, easy thing, great business model, these attractions and events. So it made sense for me.
What I'm getting, as we all are here, is this, we're going from the corporate, right? We're going doctor, corporate, and then we're kind of getting into the environment. And each thing is following that environmental theme, which is going to be important when we get on to what we're going to get onto next. But before we get onto there, what date is your birthday?
24th of September, 1975.
Yeah, no, because I'm a Libran as well. I just realized, go figure. So then, all right, so now, what? 1969. So so what happened? So we won from the zip line. Now, what comes next? Is that around the Haifa journey, or what's coming next?
Next came... I guess next came the adventures into blockchain. We actually had to postpone the Wonderfruit event when the king passed away in Thailand, which was obviously the right thing to do. We postponed it from December into, I think it was January or February. And on the dates we were meant to have the event, Pete, myself, and a guy called Swami, who's intimately involved, the guy from the music director of Robot Art. We all sat, in ceremony to mark the event that should have been. And it kind of was a bit of a turning point for me. I went to a conference in the following January before the event, and I was gravitated to a particular individual. And I never go to conferences. I never wear a suit anymore. I did it for 15 years. I have the privilege of never having to do it. So, but I stuck a suit on, and I went to this fintech conference, and it was my worst nightmare. But someone said, "Oh, that's an interesting guy over there. You should go speak to him." So I went up and speak to him. And within a minute, our conversation wasn't about finance or fintech. It was about the fact that we're doing this event, Wonderfruit, in a month, and would he like to come? And he turned around to me and he said, "Yeah, actually I'm in Vienna the day before, so I can make it. And this event's in Thailand." And I'm like, "Who are you? If you're willing to do that, I'm going to put you up. Just come." I didn't know what this guy did, who he was, anything. It was just we had a conversation. It went that way, and then it went that way. So he came to the Wonderfruit event, and we spent a good deal of time together. And he was one of the early participants in the blockchain world, very early participants in it, and tried to explain to this deep old world finance guy what this thing was and what Bitcoin was and what Ethereum was, and he's a guy that works in the Ethereum space, and what all of this meant. And I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at, and I thank you, Mom, I really think I'm a smart guy. And I couldn't grasp it. It took me months to grasp it. It's really interesting. I think because I'm so set in the ways of the old world financial system, I couldn't understand it. And then one day I got it, and it was a proverbial, it's the holy shit moment. Like, oh wow, this is, and I get goosebumps now, this is a game changer for humanity. This is the ability for humanity to interact and scale without the middleman. And if you look throughout the course of any civilization, and since the birth of time, humanity, when we're organizing ourselves in large scale, we organize ourselves through leadership structures, and single points of ownership and middlemen. And suddenly we have a way to work and exist without that. So that allows for secure system that provides transparency and direct access. And once you put that into the equation and a way to organize yourselves, it totally changes the way humanity works. And I was just blown away by that. The existing business that I had was focused on, changing the incentive systems in some way, the democratization of finance, that what I referenced before. I immediately steered that straight into focusing on the blockchain. It's now morphed into a company called All Infra, which is focused on climate products within the blockchain world, so digitizing carbon credits, renewable energy certificates, so that we can make sure, these things are already traded, but they're duplicates. You don't even know if they come from real renewable energy sources, but we can track, trace, and ensure all of that now happens digitally, right from the smart meter at literally where the energy is produced, working with people like Schneider Electric, etc., all the way through to the end user of the credit, who wants to do an offset. And that now is going to be a massive multi-trillion-dollar market. There's no question about that. There are a lot of people moving and approaching the space, and that's a fantastic area to be in. But I did that, and then I did something which wasn't very aligned, because I saw this blockchain world, and I went and set up a hedge fund in the blockchain space, working in the token space. I partnered with an amazing portfolio manager, ex-Harvard endowment, did it properly, got regulated, but I sucked myself back into the old world financial piece, and the end result of that was just to make numbers in a spreadsheet, and that's not really where I'd moved to. So passions weren't aligned there, and I exited after about a year and a half under that. And and then I was, I went through divorce and young son, and wanted to be there and present for my young son. And then I, the last 18 months I got dragged into is the wrong word. I mean, I found in a most amazing way the most amazing project which brings together, everything that I've been working on, whether it be the blockchain space, the events, the authentic communication, the finance world, the legal world, all together in one, and kind of found my purpose in this adventure, and that's the seeds economy and governance system that we've created, and this new world and new civilization that we're co-creating together, which I'd love to.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that. I mean, one thing which I want to just say at this point is that, are you proud of what you've achieved? Like, do you love who you've become?
I'm getting there. I certainly wasn't through my investment banking days. Like, I didn't take that, I'm an MD, or I run this business, or I'm head of Asia Pacific. I didn't feel that at all in myself. And rightly so, I should have been proud, and you know, there are people in those roles who absolutely should be proud of their achievements. You know, it's you know, they are objectively great achievements. But I've struggled with that word proud, definitely. I for myself, and I'm getting there. You know, am I proud with the way I'm showing up for my son? Yes, I am. God, that's a big step. I was able to say that today.
Respect, brother, man.
You know, am I proud on what I'm working on now? Well, I am driving and co-creating this regenerative renaissance in the most beautiful way and expression I can. And am I proud of that? Yeah, I'm proud of that now. So, yeah. Progress. Asked me a year ago, I would have struggled with that. So thank you.
So now so we're going to get on to Seeds now. And for those of you who don't know, full disclosure, I'm about to become an ambassador for Seeds, because I think this project is one of the most important projects that humanity can undertake. Right? And I say that deliberately and purposefully. So moving on to that now. So Ronnie, if I were to ask you, right, so what is Seeds to you in a way that people out there can grasp?
What is Seeds to me? Probably the easiest way to do that is to first describe my journey into it, because that's the personal piece. And the beautiful thing about Seeds, this platform, is that it is very personal. It means different things to different people. So given my story that you heard, you can see the evolution. Maybe I'll start from there, and then we can get a little bit more granular. So summer 2019, I was at a friend's wedding, and I met a climate scientist, and amazing woman, very, very smart, one of the leaders in her field. And I was in LA, and I had dinner with her in October of 2019. And it was one of the most difficult dinners I think I've had in my life, because it was very, very depressing. Not to say I was depressed by having dinner with you. I'm sure you're going to see this. So. But you know, in her journey on the climate science path, she had come to the position where she didn't believe humanity was able to solve our global challenges. It was, we've got 10 years to reverse materially the path we're on, and if we don't do it within that time frame, you know, we're going to go the way of the dinosaurs. And I was like, and she didn't see anything which could turn this around. So I was at dinner saying, well, look, I've been in the impact space for the last 7 years. What about this? What about that? I heard people are doing this. I heard people doing that. Someone's going to try that. And she was like, well, I know someone is working on that. It's not going to, unfortunately, it's not going to work. People are trying that. It hasn't worked. And it wasn't, you know, I finished dinner and I went home and I didn't really sleep much and woke up and was pretty like, the next day, like, well, this sucks. And so then I came back to Bali, and you know, was really coming here to do a lot of inward work at the time. You know, went sort of a modest juggalo in a rice field. I didn't connect with the people I knew in Bali. I was very much just, I guess, you know, what is it? Meditation, yoga, journal, cry was my you know, delightful path for a few weeks or months. And then in November, she sent me an article. And, you know, we all get sent a lot of articles and a lot of videos to watch by friends. You know, a lot of them we should do and never do. But for whatever reason, one evening, you know, about a few weeks after she'd sent it to me, I started to read this article. And this article was called Transcending Our Existential Crises Through Collective Intelligence. It's on Medium. It's a pretty obscure article. It doesn't have a lot of views, and it really resonated with me, this article, because I've always believed and said to people two things: one, that I'm a naive idealist, And two, I believe technology can solve our global challenges. I remember saying that to people a number of times. And so I read this article, and then I couldn't sleep. I literally couldn't sleep for almost 2 days. And my mind was just going, dum, dum, turning over and over and over. And I finally got some sleep, and I woke up, and it was, my own eureka moment, channeling something or another where I said, oh, I can see how we can solve our global challenges, which sounds ridiculous, right, when you say it to yourself. And, I came to this conclusion. I was like, okay, we have the will. If you go around and ask the majority of the planet, they will want to solve our global challenges. We have the capital, there's plenty of money. We have the technology, and there's lots of technologies around that are going to drive this renaissance. But blockchain in particular, as a way of organizing and distributing value, is a game changer, as I said before. So what's our problem? It's just our systems. It's just our economic and governance systems, which have served us so well for so many years. We came out of wars and all kinds of things, and we're in a much better position now than we were. But they're no longer fit for purpose. And remember, this is pre-pandemic. So, okay, well, we just need a new system. All right, well, we can build a new one. And we can put it on a phone. We can make an app. So we can put a whole new economic and governance system, a new civilization, a new way of thinking, driving us and incentivizing us to regenerate our planet, and we can put it on an app. And then my version of the vision was then to take that app and take it to these authentically engaged festivals all around the world, the Wonder Fruits of this world, and do 20 Wonder Fruits simultaneously. Instead of Live Aid, call it Earth Aid. Drop this system on these authentically engaged people, and maybe you strike a match, and maybe we can drive real change. Sounds so simple. And then I went out for a walk, whatever, met a friend, came home, and then I realized, this is ridiculous. This is so big thinking. I've got my son, I've got like 5, 6 other businesses I'm either co-founder on the board of. I'm trying to chill out. I wouldn't know where to begin. This is insane. I'm not going to do anything with this. Sounds really great, but yeah, all right, great idea. Ideas are cheap. We'll see where that goes. And I couldn't get it out of my head. Every day I was thinking about things. Oh, what about this? What about this? How would that work? How would this work? And then in December, we host Wonderfruit, and we do an ethos event before the gates open where we bring great minds in conservation and sustainability to have a discussion, given they're there anyway, prior to the gates opening, to see whether we can catalyze some beautiful change in any way. And I was walking the fields with someone, and for whatever reason, this thing I couldn't get out of my head, I turned around to him and I said, hey, I got this crazy idea. We got the will, the capital, the technology. We just need a new system. Let's put it on a phone and an app. We'll do 20 Wonder Fruits around the world, Live Aid, Earth Aid, and we'll maybe strike a match and change the world. And he looked at me and he went, that's not crazy. And I was like, okay, all right. So anyway, we have a great festival. We're Sunday afternoon, and I'm hosting a lunch for about 10 people. And he walks up with another 10 people. And I was like, come join the lunch, let's all chill and chat and, unwind from, some great music and great talks and great events at the festival. And so he sat down with everyone. It was very informal, very casual. And he looked at me and he went, can you share that vision you had? And I was like, as you can tell, I love to talk, so that wasn't hard for me. I was like, yeah, sure, okay, I'll do it. So I did I sat down and I stood up and I said, hey, look, we've got the will, the capital, the technology. We just need a new system, an economic and governance system. We can put it on a phone. We can change the incentive system to regenerate our planet. And we can do 20 Wonder Fruits around the world and do Earth Aid, and maybe we strike a match. And this guy in the audience went white, and he looked at me and he went, we built it. And I looked at him and I went, you built it. And I proceeded to grill him for the next hour and a half in front of everybody. And I'm getting goosebumps, unsurprisingly, when I tell this story. And I grilled him in front of everyone. Everyone else was silent. There were 20 people there, and we're at the festival. And I just like, what about this? What about that? How are you dealing with this? How are you dealing with that? You know, quite detailed technical questions. And he had answers to questions I hadn't thought of, better answers to the ones I had thought of answers. I mean, it was just amazing. I was blown away. And he was blown away because I just told him the vision of what he and many other beautiful humans had been working on for 4 years prior to me meeting Reiki, who was the guy at the festival. So immediately afterwards, this conversation gravitated towards each other. He looked at me, he said, you've got to join us. I was like, yeah, it looks that way, but let me first understand what you're doing. We're in Thailand, you know, let me sit down like with a clear head and go through this. So I, you know, he's like, okay, where do you live? And of course we lived 5 minutes away from each other in Bali. So we're back in Bali. He brought round all his documents, everything. And it was all the stuff I wrote 5-7 years ago about the democratization of finance, the move from corporate capitalism to individual capitalism, you know, the thinkings of Rifkin and others. And, you know, at that point, you know, kind of, you know, it's surrender on my part. I have no choice. Like, I have to join. And, you know, I joined this amazing decentralized team of experts in governance, technology, user interface, finance, regeneration, economics. I can go marketing, branding, storytellers. I can go on and on and on. Who had been working on this for 4 years already, and you know, I came at it just the right time for me because they'd done all the hard work that I wouldn't have, you know, known where to begin with. But what they've essentially built, and what, you know, now we're co-creating together, is the proverbial new civilization. It sounds ridiculous and grand, but it's true. So, yeah, that was my journey to Haifa and Seeds, which, leads me to be able to deploy all of these, you know, weird skill sets that I never really understood why I became a barrister, or why I was in banking for so long, or why I was this conscious capital entrepreneur. And now I see it.
Yeah, isn't it amazing, right? Thank you for doing that, mate. Like, and you're right, you can talk, mate.
Yeah.
And it's great. But I want you now to take a break, grab some water. But it's amazing, though, right? How life, you know. I was having this conversation with a friend the other day, and we're talking about how life. And this friend of mine is going through a bit of a tough time, right? And but I come from this perspective of life is working for you, right? Even the stuff that hits you hard is just showing you what you need to work on. I've got stuff to work on, right? I haven't done it all, right? But hearing your story again just reminds me of that, right? It just reminds me that, you know, there's a plan, like there's something going on that we all have, and like part of the show every week is to, you know, people inspire people, and unity in diversity, meaning that, you know, we have our own individual story, which is our access to draw upon the skills and the gifts and the attributes that we have. But at that deeper level, there's unity and diversity, which means that we all connect. We're all one, and that collective that we spoke about, that you keep speaking about, is obviously what connects us and all of us sitting here. But I love that, right? So, but what an amazing journey, you know, knowing more about your life and just seeing how it all just began to come. And that, you know, what advice would you give to your young son or a young guy or girl who's in a position of like exploration and excitement and wondering, what the hell am I doing this for? You know, just relax, breathe, listen, learn, do what you're passionate about. All of these things have just connected in the most incredible way for you, right? And it's such a beautiful thing to see, to hear, and to navigate some of these guys in a room, to navigate them through so they can make the connections for themselves with, ideally, is just mirror looking back at them to kind of see, well, where is it in your life that maybe you're not listening enough? Where is it in your life that perhaps you aren't following or exercising the passions that you know you have? Do you even know what your passions are, right? A lot of people don't even know what the passions are. So get busy, right? 2021, it's time to like blow this shit up, right? It's time to get back on that journey. Pardon my French for the kids watching, but hey, it's not a bad word. So look, what I want to do is in a minute, so anyone in the audience, we have another microphone somewhere around here. So if you have a question, right, I'm going to give you the chance to ask a question. Remember, with these microphones, best to angle it towards your mouth, not like this, because you won't hear it. So just angle it towards your mouth. Short questions are great. That would be, or just if you have a comment to make, that would be awesome. So before we do that, the one thing I want to ask you is, no problem, you heard that. The one thing I want to ask you is, so if you could describe Seeds in maybe 2 or 3 sentences, how would you do it? And then after that, we'll go to the questions.
Okay, great. So, look, Seeds is many things to many people. But the beautiful thing about the system, it's the owned, governed, and co-created and adapted over time by the people that use it. So what it is today is one expression of it, but what it will be when all of you join and all of you join, it will be something else. So at the outset, it is a redesigned incentive system. So our current currency out there, money, dollars or rupees or whatever, is a currency, and it's an incentive system designed upon scarcity, competition, and by default incentivizes us to dig up and degenerate our planet. Seeds is a system based on sufficiency, so there can be as much currency as we need. I think the notion of scarcity in the existing financial system has been blown away now. There isn't enough money, there isn't enough money, there isn't enough money, we'll print $6 trillion. Well, I think the game's up. Like, where do those $6 trillion go? Who really knows? So instead of based upon competition, it's based upon cooperation and incentivizes us by default. It's designed to incentivize us to regenerate the planet. So it's a very simple system. It's a free to transfer currency. At the moment, cash is free. Well, this is free to use. But if you're doing a transaction which the community agree has come together and viewed that as a regenerative transaction, then you are going to get rewarded basically with cash back, or rewarded for entering into those regenerative transactions. So you're just getting rewarded for doing good, and the community decide what is good. The beautiful thing about this system is, all the other cryptos out there, they're going to make the people that founded them billionaires, which is great, and they should do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that isn't a new financial system that's going to be widely adopted and drive humanity into a better place. Like, we have a massive wealth gap that's only getting worse and is not serving us. So Haifa at the outset has such a beautiful inception with Seeds, where they created this Seeds platform, gifted it to humanity, and then the community voted on how much we got paid for creating it. So its inception, the seed here is pure. So it's an economic system. It's also, we build tools at Haifa in how to govern ourselves and how to organize ourselves. And that's that value reflection machine that we talked about right at the beginning that drives us towards shared ownership and that vision of collective intelligence. So,
beautiful. Beautiful. And I'll quickly interject. So on January 28th, that's the 28th of January, we have a Seeds introduction, right? Evening to learn more. So if you want to learn more, get in touch with me or Ronnie. It's the email address is actually in the invite or on the Facebook event, also on the Instagram posts, or just contact me and I'll let you know where and when. So what we're going to do is that we'll take some questions now. And I think a few people, if you had a question, just put your hand up, and then we can get the microphone to you. Already got it. There you go.
Thank you for sharing. I actually have a bunch of questions. I'm trying to put it in one, so it might be a long question. So earlier you mentioned that everybody has their own definition what's good for the planet, right? So, of course, I would like to know what your definition for that is. And intertwined with this question would be, what do you think where humanity should go, and what part the responsibility for technology takes for each individual? I hope that's understandable.
Yeah. I guess, what is regenerative? In order to heal the planet, we need to heal ourselves. So it starts with the individual and your own personal journey in terms of love and interaction and connection within humanity in part defines regeneration, I believe. What I believe technically in sort of the more practical space is regenerative is interesting, but I'm not the world's expert on it. And in fact, what we do is we rely on a community of experts who spend their lives creating, the new version of rating agencies, which can rate what's regenerative, and then the community can lean on these rating agencies and adopt some of their views and their experts. So, we talked about this notion of, collective intelligence coming together. Well, there is someone who is the expert on, a particular type of renewable energy. And whether that is truly going to be productive for regeneration. There are experts on how to regenerate our soil. There are experts on what we need to do to deacidify our oceans. There are experts on the bottom pillar of civilization, of the civilization stack, if you like, is our food systems, right? We know our global food systems are broken, so regenerating the planet has to start with fixing our food systems. Like, I shouldn't be buying a US strawberry wrapped in plastic from a supermarket in Hong Kong. Like, that's unhealthy, insane, and expensive. So, I tackle it in my own ways. So, I've said, regenerating the planet was getting involved in some healthcare, events rather than things, other renewable energies. But it means something different to different people, and everything's valid. And, we need that broad commons to come to that collective wisdom of what it is.
Yeah, no, that's got it. Thank you for the question, darling. Thank you. And any other questions? Yeah, Flob. So who we got? But by the way, while we're finding the question, and we'll come back to you after Edric, is I obviously know Reiki as well, and he's a phenomenal, much like Ronnie, a phenomenal human being. So if you're watching, Reiki Corden, good day, brother. See you soon. Phenomenal human being. All right, you're on, Joe.
So, hello, I'm Joe. The question I have is, what gives the token its value? Is it scarcity, or is it is there something backing it? There's just sort of is there endless seeds can be created, sort of inflation at infinitely, and it's sort of we're just building so much value that network effect ends up backing it up, or what's the vision there?
So real-world adoption and use is what drives value for a currency. The way we measure that is it's not market cap as we do in the corporate world. It's GDP. It's the velocity of money. How many people are actually using it? So at this stage, what we're doing in sort of what we describe as our pre-go live phase, we're reaching out to the communities of communities all around the world that are focused on regeneration. We're not necessarily trying to adopt each individual person. So there are large communities out there. The World Indigenous Forum represents 300 million people globally, and there are communities all the way down to 5,000 people, and they're already organized. So we're the meta layer which brings all of them together, and therefore hopefully gets them to use the currency within their systems. In terms of the scarcity point, well, we have a beautiful opportunity with this technology to do something we've never been able to do before, which is actually measure the demand for the currency, i.e. new production that's come to the table, and then generate new currency based upon that number. So, I know we a lot of us like to talk about this world of abundance we're moving into, and, I do believe in that, but we are just working here on sufficiency. We just need to have enough currency for the people that are coming and using the system in a real way. Now, where does that new currency go to? Well, it goes to the people that are engaging in the regenerative transactions. If you take a gas card to the gas station, send 100 seeds, it costs you nothing to do it, it's fine, that's a great transaction, better than Visa, MasterCard. But if I take my electric car to the solar field, and the community has agreed that that's a regenerative transaction, then I send my 100 seeds, then we both, on both sides of the transaction, will get a share of the harvest of the inflation of the creation of new seeds every month. The harvest protocols and the creation protocols these things are relatively complex. The notion of our existing financial system is complex. So if I sat in a room and asked 100 people how our existing financial system would work, not many would be able to tell me, and those that do know that it doesn't actually quite work right now. What defines the value of the currencies? Well, it's the velocity and how much they're used. It's not a gold standard. It certainly isn't related anymore to the GDP of these countries. So what is it? Well, at the end of the day, it's a trust. It's a trust in the network and the other users. So we've been very, very careful at this stage to only bring on regenerators and people that are really focused on that core mission into the Seeds platform. It's still invite only, which is the opposite of what you would do if you're trying to get mass adoption. And we're being very slow and careful about that because we want the core of it to be true to what we want Seeds to achieve, which is to drive significant regeneration of the planet within 10 years. A lot more behind that question, so I'll happily catch up later to go a bit deeper.
Great question, Brother Joe. So now if you could pass that to Edric. You had a question, right? So we'll probably get towards the last
question and then pass it over.
All right, so you see that? Kedar intercepted it. Will not pass it on, refuses to. That's okay, brother. So Kedar will do you, then Edric will come to you, and that will probably be our last question. Okay, you're on, Kedar.
Yeah, hi, Rodney. Yeah, so I've been traveling around and met a lot of burners and a lot of these communities and same thoughts and same kind of ideology, right? So there's this question which always in my mind, which I don't have the answer. Probably, you could throw some light. So we are 7.3 billion now, right? And then in 5 years, the estimates are we will be 10, right? 10 billion. And then we don't have enough resources for 10 billion people. So how would this new finance system would compensate for this scarcity when the population is growing at this enormous rate, right? Yeah.
So I fundamentally believe we do have enough resources. We're just not allocating them correctly. If we just take food as the base pillar of civilization and one of the most important resources, we throw away, what is it, a third or almost a half of all food gets thrown away. I mean,
3%.
Huh?
It's about 43%.
It's about 43%. I mean, that's insane. There are kids my son's age who are starving. That's how can that be? So the governance systems, the way we organize this value reflection machine, this collective intelligence, can help us redefine our systems so that we don't go there. The other piece of this is, I think that we're in Bali, so Tri Hiti Karana is very appropriate. The connection to, the ground, humanity, and above. I think in many of certainly our Western societies, but in society in general across humanity, we've lost our connection to the earth. and regeneration of the soil, like putting humanity to work. And by the way, they need to do things now because, you know, if you take a tourist-driven economy like Costa Rica, for example, you know, they're struggling right now. And they have options. Do they go and do another debt dollar game, or do they launch, maybe as part of the Regenerate Costa Rica project, we're working with Kate Raworth and others, who wrote the book on donative economics, is, you know, suddenly with the pandemic, we've got a top-down adoption strategy as well as this grassroots one, so the pandemic was a gift. But it's systems, to me, I believe we do have. We just got to dish it out better.
Would it be fair to say that at some point of time, all these international borders have to be erased to share the resources and...
I'll sidestep that question and put it like this. One thing we all have in common is we sit on this blue marble, hurtling through space. And at least for the time being, we don't really have material ways of getting off it in large scale. So I think we have a common purpose. It's just that simple. So, yeah, we need to work within different constructs, you know, whether they be borders, whether they be, you know, different people not being able to work together, as we all have in different companies and different structures. But we've just got to find our way through that. I 100% believe we will.
Great. Thank you, guys. So we're going to move on to you, Brother Edric. Now, after this question, we're going to wrap up, and I'm going to give you a little mystery challenge, as though it hasn't been challenging enough already. But it's a good challenge, this one. So, Edric, last question.
Yes. Hi, Ronnie. Fascinating topic. So, Burning Man changed my life. Really opened my eyes to like the way we can all like live and act and co-create together. And I've always been thinking, how can we bring the culture and the way we operate at Burning Man out to the world? And I realized it's very challenging because Burning Man is kind of a little bubble and container where, you know, you got all these change makers co-creating together, but it's still within a span of like 9 days. You know, it's kind of like a vacation. You throw away your life behind. You really leave as someone else. So I'm just thinking, from your perspective, what's your vision of how can we really live based on these principles of co-creation, collective intelligence, using technology in a way that we could really acknowledge and reward, incentivize people's contribution fairly, and create these systems where people are, I don't know, they're willing to put their ego behind, because that's what's so beautiful about Burning Man, the trust that everyone's got your back, and because of that, you're willing to give and contribute more. So how can we take that ethos to the real world and use technology to catalyze this?
One step at a time. You know, we sit there working at Haifa, building tools to facilitate the regenerative renaissance, to create new tools to help us step into a new civilization. I think one thing we don't need to do is spend any time talking about what's gone wrong or where we are today. I think all we need to talk about is where we want to be. And then we can step into that platform and we can co-create it together. I think it's that simple. The beautiful thing is these tools have been created, which is mind-blowing to me, by, you know, a bunch of really dedicated, smart people. So it's up to us to take these things and experiment with them and play with them and use them. And, you know, do I know whether seeds is going to be a global currency? I feel it in every fiber and bone of my body that it will do. Will it be the only one? Absolutely not, nor should it be. You know, there are plenty of human endeavors that we want to incentivize. The exploration of space, the exploration of our oceans, and lots of other worthwhile components. But seeds is purely focused on regeneration of the planet. You know, I like to say I'm naturally lazy, so I want to deal with the incentive system on the top, like help get that in place, and then I can kick back and finally retire. That's my plan anyway. But we've each got our role to play in this. We each have our purpose in this. No one can do it on their own. Together we want to do it. I guarantee that. Like, if we go and ask everyone, we want to do it, And now we've got the tools to do it, so we can do it. That's it. We can just step into it.
Love it, man. Love it. Great question, Edric. So look, guys. So we're going to begin to wrap up. So the challenge, like you need another one. The challenge is this one, right? So in about a minute or two. So what we do is we let the guest end the show, right? And by end the show, it's like, well, actually, before we do that, a question popped up. So we've spoken a lot about giving love and receiving love. We haven't named it, but that's what's going on, right? Cool. So now, how can maybe someone who's either here in the audience or maybe watching on one of the different media we've got this playing on, right? How can they contribute to you, or how can they contribute to your vision or seeds? What would you say?
Contributing to the vision, if you're interested, please reach out, and we can understand your passions and help guide you into seeds, this regenerative toolkit that's there for you to transact and exist. Go to your passion, though. Go to your passion. Seeds is your passion, what you want it to be. And that's really important. So once, when you've sat with that for a little bit and you can step into it, we'd love to invite you onto the Seeds platform and co-create with the early adopters here. It's a lot of fun, but it's also a rabbit hole. So coming to with the passion is really, or the purpose piece, especially at this early stage of it, is really important, because you can come into it and you're literally Alice in Wonderland, and you're like, oh, this is enormous. I mean, it literally is enormous. There are people all around the planet working on it and doing different components of it, and there is no way any one person can keep track or know the details of everything. Like, it's, by definition, it's driven by humanity in this decentralized way.
Love it, love it. So now the challenge is that, so in a minute or two, I'd love you to end the show. So how would I want that to happen? So if there's anything that you're being called to say, you may have said it already, or anything that you haven't said yet that you're being called to say, I'm going to give you an opportunity to do that after I do this little thing. But before I do this little thing, I just want to thank you, Brother Ronnie, for being straight up, being you, being just transparently authentic, man. I love it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks a lot for inviting me here.
Oh, man, super, super, super welcome. So now, for those of you at home or here in the audience, so 2 or 3 things. So one is, so after the show is done, right, we have an amazing audience here, and no one is here by chance. There's no coincidence here. So the people in this room are supposed to be here. So if there's somebody that you feel like you want to connect with, don't walk out of here and miss that opportunity, right? Take it, say hi, my name's blah, blah, blah. Just would love to connect with you. Don't know why, but let's talk, right? That's the first thing. Second thing, you got to connect with Kadar, with George, with Itchy. There's stuff that you guys you got to talk about, just the feeling. And the other thing is that share this, right? So if you're feeling this and you're watching at home or maybe watching here in the audience, it's about sharing. This is a grassroots project which we're going to scale later on this year. But the idea behind SpeakuP Monday is about that. It's about people inspire people, and Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, right? It's about unity and diversity. And that happens through people like you watching here who've come in, sharing and spreading this message to other people who you get that sense or the intuition that would be into it or could play a part in it, even be in Ronnie's shoes. I know some of you here should also be here, right? And we're super open to that. It's self-selecting. In other words, if you're feeling that you want to do it, just do it. Just come and speak to me. George, you're doing one soon, by the way. All right, take a breath. So guys, January 28th, there is a Seeds invitational evening to go deeper into this journey, right? So it's on the Instagram post, the Facebook event as well, or just contact me. Ronnie's email's on there as well, or just contact me and I'll make sure you get the details. Thank you so much for being here, guys. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing and being incredible human beings who you are, right? So, Brother Ronnie, we're going to go to you, then we're going to give a round of applause because I feel that, but not yet. Then I'm going to give you a big hug because we do that. and then we'll wrap it.
Well, amazing. Thanks for the opportunity to share with you all. I love that word coincidence because it's actually misused. The real word is coincidence. And yeah, I'm sure you were all here or watching for a reason. The message I have is very simple, is that I know the planet is going through a very difficult time, and there's a lot of concern about where things are going and what we're doing as humanity, both politically and otherwise across the planet. And it may get more challenging yet. But I see a beautiful regenerative renaissance the other side of this. I mean, better than anything that humanity has existed in before. And I really do see that. And it's being co-created by people. And we just need to step into it together. So, yeah, it's, the pandemic was a silver lining. It was a gift. As you're building a new civilization, people now understand why we need one. So that bit of the discussion is much easier. So my sign-off, I guess, is my little boy Finn was here for a month, and I was blessed to spend a lot of time with him this year, even though it's difficult to move around the planet. And he lives in LA. But as he says, it's just all about cuddles and peace. So I sign off with cuddles and peace.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. Thank you, Ichi, Team the Tropical Nomad. Thank you. Now we're going to